Chapter 30. I slept poorly and rose into what was yet night. My muscles ached, my hands were stiff, my arms sore. My chest seemed heavy and my hair felt like seaweed. Doubts tumbled in. I should never have come here. I should never have left Jacob alone. I'll never find him. I can't do this. I made things worse for Sam. I don't know what I'm doing. Sam, Thad, Señor Rosales, they're all doing things for me. What do I do for them? Make everything worse. And Father will be here soon. Maybe Mother. How will I be able to tell them that Jacob is gone? I hate myself. No, I fairly shouted at myself. You're just making excuses. I scrabbled about our tent and found a cooked potato. Unsteady from tension, dissatisfied with myself, cold, wishing only to resume the search, I wrapped Mother's shawl about my shoulders and went outside. I sat before the tent and ate the potato. I kept wishing Thad would hurry, but was not sure when he'd show up. I could see no stars or moon, the darkness made heavy by a mist that swirled around me like a wet black cloth. A briny sea smell was strong, the smell of the city equally so. The only sound was my own uneasy breathing. Now and again I'd pass a hand over my cheeks, wiping away driblets of water. I preferred to think it was mist, not tears. I suspect I was wrong. I shivered, drew my shawl tighter, and wished I had hot coffee. But Señor Rosales' cafe was not yet open, and I had no energy to make a fire. Instead, I used my flint to light my lantern. It offered a poky point of light and a hint of heat. I kept it close. As I continued to sit there, in the middle of what seemed like a world of nothingness, my thoughts were mostly about Jacob. I tried to imagine where he was, but was unable to summon a picture. I worried again about Sam, fearful that by my talking to the police chief, being at the Mercury, and being seen, I had put him and his father at greater risk than they already were. I remembered something I once read. Night is the devil's way of making you feel alone. I kept staring uphill looking for Thad. It was, however, from the direction of Portsmouth Square that someone appeared out of the haze, as if materializing from a cloud. It took a moment for me to realize it wasn't Thad, but a man I didn't recognize. He seemed surprised to see me too, because he halted, gawped a moment, then swerved in haste, and hurried downhill, never looking back. I watched him go, thinking I knew him, but he had shown up and disappeared so quickly I could not recall exactly where or when I'd seen him. I looked across the way at the San Francisco Cafe restaurant, and my thoughts went to Señor Rosales. Since we said we must talk this morning, I felt obliged to tell him what I was doing, lest he worry. But there was no sign of wakefulness in his cafe. As I was thinking of him, I saw someone coming down the hill with what looked like a fuzzy star. It was Thad, stepping out of the mist like a scarecrow's ghost. I had told Jacob he wasn't my sweetheart. To be honest, I wasn't sure what having a sweetheart meant. All the same, I was surprised how relieved and glad I was to see him. "Mornin'," he called. "Good morning," I returned, standing up. "Thank you for coming." He bobbed a nod. "Waiting long?" "Didn't sleep well." For a moment he and I stood face to face, awkward, unable to find words. I was learning one must listen hard, since what is truly said might well be mute. I had not listened well enough to Jacob. Now, as I stood there with Thad, what I felt beyond all else was gratitude. But all I said was, "I have my flint case in my money belt, in case our lanterns go out again." "Knife?" "Always." He wiped the wetness from his face. "Guess we better get. I'm betting we find him." I tried to imitate his yes by saying "ayah." It came out as In return he gave a mocking snort. I grinned. I looked at the cafe, but there was still no sign of Señor Rosales. I said, "Let's go." Thad and I headed downhill, lanterns held before us, splashing through muck and mud. The fog was so intense that we were unable to see more than 2 feet ahead. It was as if we were passing through a cloud. Thad, echoing my thoughts, said, "Fog'll make looking harder." "It'll lift," I said, determined to be optimistic. Moments later I tripped over something, I had no idea what, and went sprawling. Thad helped me get up, but I was damp, filthy, and distraught. My lantern had also gone out. "You all right?" "Fine," I said, although nothing seemed right. He said, "My light will work." While I worked to scrape off the mud, we kept on with Thad's lamp as I told myself I mustn't let him see my tears. I don't know if he did, but he said nothing. We crossed over Montgomery Street and reached the Cove beach, but knew it only because our feet crunched in sand and I could hear the gentle slip-slap of water plucking against the shore. The swirling gloom made it hard to see, even though I knew that before us, right offshore, were hundreds of Rotten Row ships. I couldn't see one of them. How do you search for what is invisible? Thad said the obvious. Hard to see. I said, "We'll just row out. Can't avoid the ships. Besides," I added, "it's not as if we know where to look anyway." Thad grunted his agreement, then led the way to where we had left our rowboat. As we approached, I saw a blob of light. Thinking of that man who'd gone past me as I waited for Thad, I halted. "Someone's there," I said. "Hoot to a holler," said Thad. "It's Sam." He was right. Sam had remembered where our rowboat was from the day before and was sitting in it. I was so glad to see him. A small light was at his feet, giving a glow to his face. It occurred to me that I had never seen him smile. As we approached, he stood up. "Morning." "Good morning," I returned. "Thanks for coming." The three of us stood staring out into the dark bay. None of us spoke. I sensed something was wrong. Even as Sam continued to eye the bay, he said, "Castle saw you at the Mercury last night. Told my father and me to get out. Said we can't work there any more." "Oh, Sam," I cried, "that's awful." "Didn't even pay us what he owed us." Terribly upset, I said, "We shouldn't have been there." "Wasn't you. You were just bringing the lantern back." "God-awful man," said Thad. Sam finally turned around to face us. "Not saying otherwise," he said. I said, "But what will you and your father do? Can you find another job?" "Probably, at another saloon. The saloons like music." "Don't know why. Nobody listens." He sounded so sad. "I like your playing," I said. Soon as I spoke, I felt embarrassed for offering such an empty phrase. "My father said he might try and find us a job on a ship going back. But as I told you, risky for colored folks. Hard to know who to trust." Thad said, "How much will it take for you to get back home?" $500. Thad said, "If I get lucky at the tables, you can have it." "Sounds good," said Sam, but not as if he thought he'd ever get the money. "Sam," I said. "What?" I hated the way he was treated, but I didn't want to say it so blandly. It seemed empty and made me tongue-tied. What I finally said was, "I'm sorry for what happened." He studied me for a few moments. At length he took a deep breath and added, "Just so you understand, when my brother vanished, we didn't know what to do. By the time we figured out what happened, he was gone. Nothing we could prove. Maybe he's on a ship. Maybe he's a slave somewhere. Maybe he got back to Sag Harbor. Hope so. We've never heard. So I'm willing to help find your brother, mostly my way of getting back at Castle." The three of us stood there awkwardly until Sam said, "Okay, your brother. You have any idea how you're going to look?" I said, "Are you sure you want—" There was anger in his voice when he said, "I just said, finding your brother is hitting Castle. Come on, I need to do something." Somewhat abashed, I said, "I don't know a better way than to just get on some boat and search." I looked at Thad. "Fine with me." To Sam I said, "You have a better idea?" "Nope," he said, and stepped out of the rowboat. As I looked at the two boys, my emotions swelled, feeling as I did the strength of such friends. Impulsively I went up to Sam and hugged him, then turned and did the same to Thad. Neither of them said or did anything. They were too surprised. Or maybe they were just boys. I stood back, embarrassed at my own emotions, but glad I had shown them. All I could think to say was, "Let's find Jacob."